Hello, everyone. Welcome to Weekends with Amit. I am your host, Krishanu, and we will be discussing about a new subject today. And the subject would be War and Peace. Now, this is not going to be the iconic novel of Leo Tolstoy written in 1896, but this is going to be a very contemporary dialogue about what's going on in the world, how our take is that on it, and how quantum science, again, quantum consciousness relates to it. In one of these contemporary reviews, one of the reviewers said that this book, War and Peace, is like a whole, like more like Brahman, if we say in our word. That was then. Let us see what our panelists have to say about the world today in the context of war and peace. Please help me welcome Professor Amit Goswami and Dr. Valentina Onisor. A very, very warm welcome, both of you. The subject, as I laid before everyone, is war and peace. So initially, the first dialogue goes for Professor Goswami. Let's not make any exceptions here. So, Professor Goswami, your take on war and peace in the context of today's world.
Thank you, Krishnan. Well, War and Peace is about conflict. And even after 12,000 years of some sort of civilization that we think we created, we still are so primitive in terms of fighting a war. In particular, when every day new news about the biggest calamity that has faced humanity in millennia has come upon us, is coming upon us in terms of global climate change. You know, the Antarctic ice sheets just broke off the glacier, and that may give rise to huge rise in seawater level. This endangers everyone eventually. Of course, the coastal communities, and every country has, not every country, but most countries have it. In that context, war breaking out again after 75 years of peace in Europe. You know, European continent has been a major focus of war throughout history, war between religious factions. It's always a power struggle, war between ideologies. Latest one is also about ideology. It's an ideology that creates democracy, which actually has something to do with the long peace that we have been enjoying because the world has established a much larger number of democratic countries in the 75 years of peace than ever before. But there is recent times, the last 20 to 30 years, not coincidentally, the advent of a worldview polarization between science and religion, materialist science and dogmatic religions. Science also has taken up a dogma. And this fight between dogma is one of the major causes of this recent power struggle between democracy versus dictatorship. Dictatorship has a long history. Previously, dictators were kings in cahoots with religions, and now the dictators don't depend on religions very much anymore, but they still depend on the weakening of the idea of science. It does not help that science has lost its genuine luster after taking up on the dogma of materialism. And so again, the much of the what is a power struggle of ideologies. It seems that it is a power struggle between democracy and dictatorship in the particular conflict that is going on right now. But all over the world, there still are conflict of worldviews, conflict of power struggles between dogmas. What to do about it? First of all, you should know that quantum physics has decidedly pointed us to experimental data that now has verified that there is no room for materialist beliefs. They are not scientific. We have a phenomenon called non locality, signal-less communication, that proves conclusively that human beings have the capacity of being interconnected with each other because underlying us, our separateness, we are potentially connected and anybody can activate this connection. Civilization occurs when large number of people have activated that connection, and civilization disappears when that doesn't happen anymore. The latter is the case right now, after the Soroview struggle between dogmatic science and dogmatic religion, the latest one started. So, what is quantum physics' answer other than finding evidence that materialism is just simply not valid, other than the case that in truth people are connected? They should not have conflict. Conflict should be resolvable. I'll just tell you the highlights, and then, as far as the geopolitical details, we have Valentina ready with all kinds of detail about what we can do. But the rough outline of what quantum physics can do is that quantum physics has found the way to do authentic science with full glory, with theory and experiment both to back it up, no dogma. And this, as a proof of conflict free, integrates science and spirituality. It validates much of religions, it also invalidates dogma of religions. Similarly, it validates much of science where it is valid and shows that the dogma of matter is everything just simply not true. Most importantly, quantum science has shown that there is a scientific basis for democracy and no other ism for politics. A good reason is this: you know about Newtonian physics. That's the basis of materialist science. No place for consciousness, it's a science of objects. And Newtonian physics posits this: how can we change an object's movement? We can change it by force. Listen to it again. We can change it by applying a force. So, force has been the way that we are used to use our conflicts, used to dominate another into submission, and that's the way we resolve conflict. In quantum physics, forces produce only potentiality. Material forces give rise only to material potentialities. It takes consciousness to choose from these possibilities the particular component that will come into actuality. We choose, choice. So, how can we change somebody's choice? That's the issue. How can we change somebody's choice? We can persuade, we can discuss, we can negotiate. Is there a good way to discuss? We can discuss with energies that unite us. We can discuss with energies that bring non locality to us. And you all know what that energy is. It's simply called love, Love, four little words. You know, I'm right now sitting in Kolkata, India. Calcuttans speak a language called Bengali. And love in Bengali is a word, listen to this, bhalo basha. But bhalo basha literally also means a good abode, good place to live. What it means, আমি তোমাকে ভালোবাসি, which is Bengali for I love you, means what? I'm offering you a good place to live. Where? Now, usually what we mean is the brain. But brain is notoriously bad for making these non-local connections with another person. In the brain, we become logical and computer-like, machine-like, robot-like. The way to bring love into the picture is go through the way of the heart. So I love you is best served by I place you, I find a place for you in my heart, and then requesting the other to find a place for me in your heart. That's what love is about. Finding a place for the other in your heart and affect, change the person's choices when necessary by persuasion with the energies of love. How to do this? How to use this? What are the geopolitical problems? For that, we have to go to our resident expert, Valentina Onisar, MD. The doctor will give us the answer of how to heal this particular disease of humanity going to warfare occasionally.
My God. See, so that's happening when you bring a quantum scientist to talk about war and dichotomies. He will speak about love, right? And speaking about this, for probably some of you heard about ahimsa. Is non-himsa, killing. So it's non-violence. That principle of non-violence that it's brought in millennia. That was the way how Gandhi was striving and civilization many times. So that refers not only to that meaning of not killing or not doing harm to a being, but implies also that love for everything that surrounds us, because we are all children of God. Now again, we go to that word oneness, because all that we are children of God or that oneness is not true unless we actualize it, And the fact that the humanity nowadays is dominated by all this domination, is characterized actually by domination and competition, now it's coming more and more clear, and fear. So people acting out of fear and reducing their intellectual capacities actually based on fear. You see this everywhere and inside of you if you want to look. So this ahimsa is this active attitude in which one fights against injustice, condemning the act and not the person. You see, nowadays there are all these camps also with the COVID situation. So I'll give you some analysis also of other people and also of mine. I grew up in a communist country in Europe. And this word, let's speak about what is just, what is not just, was always something important to understand. So that interference without love, of course, leads to violence and stupidity, I would say. And that's a lot of stupidity nowadays from what I see. Loving the person and fighting the evil, that's not so easy. But if you look to a mother that loves the child, you see what that means. And of course, there are so many reasons, so-called reasons or motives for violence, and then you think of the reorientation of life in a way. And to advance in what is called ahimsa, you need to kind of really learn to let go all that fear, anger, and negative feelings. And how to do that, of course, the first factor is love. And also see about these wars that we are carrying inside of ourselves. And once we are settled in this ahimsa, of course, the result would be this elimination of all these aggressive feelings. And it is said that near a person that is established in ahimsa, all beings are renunciating to hate and to dislikes. Yeah. Now, before bringing all kind of labels of war, because I watched attentively what's happening, because Romania is my native country, is next to Ukraine and Russia and so on. So there are kind of lies that you will see also on TV and Facebook, all kind of even fake scenes, So you have to be attentive of that and notice whether or not you may have been incorporated in a war without your knowledge. When you have this mentality of it's war, then you see around you only enemies. So maybe before the aggressors, whatever you call them in this scenario, Russians, they come to you. Until that moment, because of this kind of mentality, we may even as well jump at each other's throat, in the name of what is called truth, and that's another thing. Because of course, as you know, media nowadays is not doing at all what is called truth. And also, if you look back in the name of the so-called truth, people entered various false wars and useless one with each other, and all this very passionately pro or against something, defending with fury and unable to look lucidly to something. You saw that even in the pandemic 2 years, the past 2 years, the same. So when one is if you have this feeling that it's becoming a potential enemy and you enter that energy of fighting, contradiction, So all these external conflicts, of course, they are also reflecting the inner unknowledged, most of the times, conflicts, and they are also feeding like a big egregore, which is attracting also more conflicts and is discharging in the material level, producing fear. So you can say that also. And at the same time, this fears is infiltrating and pushes us towards bigger conflicts and in a vicious circle that you need to break this kind of circle. And you have to do it individually. And each of us, we mainly need to really work, first of all, with ourselves, with the way we see life and our attitude in front of life and in front of the others, because that kind of truth in the name of which we enter in this kind of fights, it's not that truth and will never be objectively a truth. So what should actually be a big reason to relax and to be harmonious, to notice what is uniting us, not what is separating us. But we forget about these things so easily, right? So also you notice it's a lot of racism coming up, in many ways. And also this what is called double standard practice. And as I said, media is fueling this mechanism greatly. And again, about the geopolitical perspective, from what I saw, and also some people that I appreciate in this sphere, I will tell you some things which I'm seeing like now and in the future a little bit, to just be attentive about, Don't keep your eyes only on this small conflict. Yeah? Because, for example, you have China. China is and is not with Russia, right? And now it seems that the Russians needs China, yeah, but it just appears so because China needs vitally Russia as well. Also pay attention to the Americans' relation with China, and then afterwards you will see that the importance of this Ukraine, more or less Cold War, will diminish. And Zelensky is the president of Ukraine; his face will become very shortly unimportant, from what I see. And also the European forces will not support much Ukraine. Rather, they will support a reconciliation with Russia, who actually ensures not just gas, petrol, but also 30% of the wheat production and rare metals and so on. So there's a lot to know about Ukraine that is not so much known, actually. And in the same time, maybe you see that China wants Taiwan now. Not because it's a strategic land, but because that's where all the semiconductors and superconductors for computers, satellites, TV, etc. So that epicenter of future, you can call it if you want. And of course, China wants America out of this, trying to force this. And then you have to know that, at least for Europe, in April, there are 3 rounds of elections coming up now in April. So for Hungary, the president of Hungary, Orban, Serbia, Vucic, and in France, of course, Macron. And probably they all will win, this is very important for Europe's future, if you're in Europe, which actually Europe's culture is beautiful and we love it, but kind of lately became more like a tourism agency, if you want. It's kind of weak. And once you see what is the richness of Asia, of South America, and so on, you don't see anymore Europe as so important. And then another thing I want to say is about this danger of gerontocracy, which can bury humanity now. Because if you look around, it's like I respect, of course, and I love old, wise people. Yeah, people over 80. Look at Amit, what he's doing. And but there are so many like that. If you look attentively, and if you know about all these powers to be, so called, you see that gerontocracy kind of rules the world. This Biden, Pelosi, Kissinger, Soros, Schwab. Yeah, Kissinger is 100 years old or so. And so all these people, they're still leading their network and doing all kind of experiments, turning around the economy of the planet. And speaking about Kissinger, of course, you know that he had many, many, many heart transplants, many kidneys. I mean, I see this from the quantum perspective and so many chances for new vital energy to influence him and turn around him in a human being, but it's not happening. And of course, all these errors that President Biden in USA is doing, all this in talks, in reason, and also Miss Pelosi, inducing great uncertainty around USA. So there's a lie, which I see, that is dominating over this axis, Washington, Moscow. And speaking of their administration, not just censorship around truth, but also around fooling the masses. And but we see what's happening. So nowadays, today, USA loses its power. The same with Putin in Russia. And also, you might have heard what happened in USA, in the USA Congress recently, when Victoria Nuland admitted the biological weapon labs and terrified the whole world, and the fact that this was financed by the Pentagon. And now Poland defied USA beautifully. And also USA administration was invalidated, while Matthew Rosenberg talked about that simulation of the attack over Capitolium, and you know that, right? So if you speak about democracy in USA, I don't know, because there are probably imminent political fights. Probably in May, Republicans will also generate an impeachment, and who would oppose that when Biden mistook Ukraine with Iran and so on. So kind of we live in this stupefied world with many citizens a little bit dull in this material consumerism era, not consumerism of knowledge, of course, just material consumerism. And what you saw in the last 2 years, people accepting all kind of lies in a package, the package around the efficacy of vaccines, about the origin of the virus. All these 2 years, they showed that the world is ready for a global domination, and the world, in this world, nobody keeps much account on any democracy. So that's what I saw. For example, in Canada, who gave hope to globalists, in this abrupt way, in a country led by an ex-convict, which is Trudeau, but who is so favorable to the global governance, So it's kind of a school example that one cannot fight with such people, So what freedom, what liberties, what expression, and so it's not to be discouraged, but to see what's happening and expect a little bit of decay in the economical, civic, or moral area, And now maybe you see the underestimated value of developing discernment in today's man-created chaos. So, and as some of you may know, that after a few more pandemics, probably the last card can be even about the alien invasion, so-called. So nowadays, when everything can be simulated and not just on Facebook, and people can be made to believe whatever one wants you to believe, through media, first of all, So the question is, how will one discern when in such kind of simulation of an alien invasion, how will one discern when something will be projected on the sky, which there were years ago, there were done such experiments, and it's totally possible. So if you're so proud of your brain, then I would suggest to really think while it's still illegal.
That was a very interesting point of view from Dr. Onisar. I believe that a lot of our viewers will resonate with that. At the same time, I would like to request Professor Goswami to throw some light on some of these issues which have been discussed right now. and to wrap it up in a way that it becomes a very interesting session altogether.
I hope from our discussion, one thing came out clearly that we cannot expect the world leaders or political leaders or the media in this day and age where it is so easy to fake the news that you are getting. But your transformation is the most important thing. Spiritual traditions have always said that you cannot really expect to change others. It takes such amount of love energy to get that. We truly need somebody like Mahatma Gandhi, and it is very difficult to count on that at the proper time. Like right now, there is nobody, no person with moral authority in the entire planet. It's a sad condition that we have to accept. So, can we even fight the forces of conflict that is built into us in form of negative emotional brain circuits? And what is the key to that fight? The key to it is the good old battle between negative and positive in our own brain. We have to make the positive emotional brain circuits and balance the negative. And each person has the responsibility of bringing peace in herself or himself, transformation. And this is the biggest contribution that quantum science is making. In the first time of human history, we now have before us laid out in detail the science needed, the creativity needed, the practices needed, the meditation needed, the worldview change, belief system change needed to make individual transformation. At the same time, of course, we strive also for bringing collective transformation, non locality en masse. But individual transformation has to happen. We have postponed this for a very long time. The crisis of war and peace is only one crisis. I already mentioned global climate change. These two crises are the most dangerous among so many others. How do we solve them? The key is in us. Please think about it. We have started a university curriculum with transformation in mind. Look up our program. That's the minimum thing that we can do, and you can help us by looking at our program, enrolling it, and become emissaries of transformation, which is also emissaries of peace on earth. You know, many years ago, there was a Hollywood movie in which all the girls who were participating in a beauty contest. And at that time, it was fashionable to say that I wish for world peace, and how it was really comical. Every contestant was saying this, and that. And of course, I always wish for world peace. And it has always been like that. People love saying that, oh, of course, I pray for world peace, but they don't mean it. Praying for world peace begins with your heart. Bring that back, bring the energies of love into your heart, and look at relationship that way. The world peace will certainly follow. Thank you.
That was really, really very great ending. World peace should certainly follow, but this is the onus is on us individuals, and we really, really cannot change others unless we put a gun to your head and it becomes completely Newtonian. Uh, As Professor Goswami was mentioning, you might want to look up amitgoswami.org for the various things we do. And we have an email ID where you can contact us, that is info@amitgoswami.org. Both these informations are available on the screen right now. Please get in touch with us. We'll reply to each and every query that we receive. And we do that all the time. Thank you very much. See you next week.